Greetings! It's I, Tentisner, your Lord and Emperor here at the Dracovin Empire, and welcome one and all. We're diving back into the world of darkness once more, and the world of Werewolf The Apocalypse. So if you're joining me, of course, either if it's live on Twitch, which is over there in the chat, or you're joining me later on YouTube, hello to everybody. Thank you for joining me. YouTube people, remember, liking, subscribing, ringing the bell, and of course, commenting are there. Have you done any adventures? And this works for the, of course, Twitch people too, that involve absence. Whether or not it's something related to them, or maybe you've done an older game of something like the Wild West, or Victorian, or Dark Ages werewolf, something like that you maybe hinted at something like. Granted, they went extinct during the War of Rage, so that's just a little bit of, like, storytelling. But, yeah, why don't we dive into talking about them? Because that's what we are on today, the Apis, the WereAurochs. Now I'm going to, or Moonbulls as they're called. Now I'm going to say here, I'm going to be using some of the art that is kind of official of them, but it's also not completely accurate. So just keep that in mind. Some of the art makes them look a little bit more Were-Bison than WereAuroch, and they are WereAurochs, not Were-Bisons. Just keep that in mind. The difference. Let's talk books. I did have to kind of specify that, though, because it's just an unfortunate thing that, like, it ended up in one of the books that they ended up appearing that way a little bit more. So, where are the books that we look for? Well, if you're looking for the first times that the Changing Breed was talked about, the Children of Gaia Tribe book referred to Moonbulls or Minotaurs. This is the first time they were mentioned, and the Mokele book gave them the name Apis. We don't really have a lot of information on them at this point in time until we get to the Past Lives book, which defines them as a lost tribe, gives information on some of their gifts. So again, that would be if you wanted to actually play one for whatever reason, or have one, in your game, you could, story-ways. And of course, this is the very tiny picture because that's what I can find. I'll do the large picture. The Changing Breed books. You'd be surprised how hard it is to find an image of the cover of the Changing Breed books from W20. For whatever reason, it does not exist in large form. But again, that gives a good deal of information. So, who are the Apis? Well, I said they are extinct. That's pretty obvious on that one. And they are WereAurochs, also known as Moonbulls. And what was their purpose? Well, and there's the glyph to them anyway. So I've got both of them active. Don't do that. That'd be silly. They were focused on the cycle of birth, reproduction, and death. Apis had mystics that their mystics had magic that were able to find a person's destined mate, and if they had difficulty conceiving, they could also aid in that process as well. They oversaw the rituals that accompanied puberty, adulthood, partnership, as well as those as aging, maturing, and death. For an Apis, the greatest honor they could have is to bring a person into the world, advise them during their life, and then escort them out of it, acting as the charge's midwife, teacher, and pallbearer. So they were the cycle of life. And they were originally walked among humanity to encourage relationships that produced children who were cooperative and wise. So they were connected very deeply with humanity. That's an important part of that. So they subtly discouraged matches that would produce children inclined to mindless destruction or dangerous foolishness, and sometimes used the same ability to encourage or discourage matches between humans and shapeshifters, and were well known for being able to predict matches between shapeshifters and kinfolk, or between two kinfolk that would breed a true shapeshifter. So yeah, this was an important part about their abilities. Now they were, unfortunately, destroyed during the War of Rage, but they did do a great service in their death. Similar to how I talked in the past, how the Grandor fell to protect the Gruhal. The Apsis protected Africa. Basically, in the Near East, their battle against the Garou prevented them from reaching Africa during the War of Rage. So the Mokele, the Basset, the Ajaba that were there survived because of the Apsis' sacrifice. Their animal kin, though, has been domesticated. The Aurochs have become cows that we know about, and their changing seed within them has been virtually extinguished within these bovines. So there is little hope for even the most optimistic among fera to see their return. Again, not impossible, just, like, really, 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 really unlikely. And then at this point in time anyway, they're mostly forgotten. Mokale remember them, through Mensis, they do that kind of thing anyway, and the children of Gaia do honor them through Tales of the Minotaur. Which we should speak of the Tale of the Minotaur. And we're going to use one of these pictures that are more WereBison than WereAurochs. I'll use these two for some displays, but it looks a little Minotaur-y, so we'll use it here too. And then we can do their Auspices and Breeds. We'll use another one of those images before we go to some ones that are a little bit better. So, Apsis were falling into extinction levels of losses. A few took a desperate gamble. They plunged into the deep umbra to seek some kind of secret that would restore their number before the rest died. They disappeared. And those that survived in the world, as we know it, died out. Now, it's said that the strange ways of the Umbra, one member of this lost expedition returned thousands of years later to discover all he had known was dead. And this loss drove him into a near perpetual frenzy until he was permanently locked into his Minotaur form. And it was captured by humans and became the source of many Minotaur myths. There you go. So that is the story of the Minotaur in a bit. Let's talk about Auspices, Breeds, and Forms, and we'll use the other image that they have here, which is, again, that's the WereBison, which they are not, they're WereAurochs. Again, this is some art that people had done for White Wolf that wasn't used because it was incorrect, but we have the art. It's weirdly unofficial, official art. Because of a mistake. But we can use it as an example, just to give you an idea. Auspice. So Apis were creatures of both sun and moon, and their offices reflect that division. But it also made them both vulnerable to silver and gold. As we've seen, things of the moon are vulnerable to silver, things of the sun are vulnerable to gold. Being both, they were vulnerable to both. So their three auspices are lunar, those born at night, who acted as the breed's warriors, protecting their charges from outside threats. Twilight, either born at sunrise or sunset, and were the ones that were closest to the spirit realms, aka those that would have traveled, in that story of the Minotaur. And then solar, those born to the day, who were closest with humans and other stocks. We'll also talk about that in a second. Now, for breeds, there were no madness among the Apis, and it was due to their professionalism as matchmakers. The only breeds were Hamid, for those born of humans, and Bos, those born of Aurochs. Their three forms, again kind of shown here, but also not accurate to agree, were Hamid, their Krynos, which was called Minotaur, a huge bullman with sharp teeth, and the Aurochs, their animal form. Those were the only three forms that they had. Let's talk about their culture a little bit more, because we can discuss that. And that's a little bit more an accuracy depicting of a Apis fighting a werewolf. I like this image a little bit more. Again, one of the few, very few actual official art of them. There aren't a lot of them, I will tell you. There aren't a lot of depictions. They were social creatures, the Apis. They lived in, yeah, so again, could be kind of connected, so a little bit too, so it's not outside the realm of possibility, you know? Maybe there are some bison that have a little bit of that core of a changing breed in them, and maybe that could become an accurate storyline of rebuilding the Apsis from the bison. I don't know, that's a weird idea too, but hey, it's the world of dark. Stranger things can see. So as social creatures, living in herds, there were between 6 and 24 individuals. A bull ruled over each herd, defending his title against all challengers. The bull was in charge of protecting the herd and leading into battle. A pair of cows advised the bulls. They were in charge of breeding advice and leading the herd in peacetime. Often a herd would attach themselves to a settlement of human or fera to act as local matchmaker. They were one of the most peaceful of changing breeds, with a mastery of a rage that even put modern stargazers to shame. So, yeah, they control rage very well. When they did fight amongst themselves, their duels were usually non-violent challenges, games of strategy, contests of singing, oratory, spiritual professions. On rare occasions, when violence was the answer to an insult or resolve a dispute, they would use the methods of their animal kin. They would take auroch form and lock horns until one combatant was forced to the ground. Deaths from a first fall duel were incredibly rare. So already we're doing a very rare thing of a violent, answer to a challenge. But again, also on top of that, the rare death there made it, it was just very rare on top of rare. Now, all the gifts that the Apis had were ritualistic in their undertones, emphasizing the cyclistic nature of Gaia and her creations. Most of them concerned with healing or enhancement of fertility, but some allowed for physical enhancement that made them deadly combatants once angered. So that's another reason that, they fell to the Garou, they didn't have the same numbers, but they did put up a fight. Now we'll do one last image here, an image I like because it matches the Lost Changing Breeds, our 3 lost ones here. And this is also another good depiction of Apis, because we'll talk about how they related to others. So, changing breeds that had little interest in the task of guiding their kinfolk, like Garou or Nuisha, basically welcomed the Apis to take over that responsibility. Others, like the Basset and Naga, actually refused the Apis access to the kinfolk until they needed the expertise. If they saw kin racked by disease or infertility, they would turn to the Apis to beg them for help. So basically, the Apis found the role of guiding kinfolk, a big one that they did, and the relationship with a lot of changing breeds, and the ones that resisted, when they needed them. So the relations between Apis and Garou soured after the Garou grew prideful and didn't take the Apis advice took the Apis advice for granted, rejecting the first partner an Apis provided them out of arrogance. Additionally, the Apis considered the responsibility to discover and enhance their charge's natural talents, whatever those natural talents would be. But Garou prized warriors above all else. So Garou parents convinced themselves that children should be warriors, not out of regard for that child, but because it would please them. WereAurochs would return from long campaigns and insist that Apis made their child weak by teaching them music, animal husbandry, agricultural mysticism, or any of the other inglorious arts according to their natural inclinations. You taught my child what they were good at. God damn you! When the Apis basically had enough of the werewolves' demands and basically withdrew from their communities, this was the first accusations of worm taint flew around. The Apis settled disputes with them and the Garou in honorable duels, but these began to spin out of control and resulted in the first casualties of the War of Rage. Other feras that believed the Apis were accomplices to the wolves, whom they advised for such a long time, refused to aid them, and until it was far too late. Again, it's the werewolves, the Garou, were in the best position. If all the changing breeds had stood up to them, it might have meant something, but they were lax, disconnected, things like that. The Apis' skill with breeding fertility has sent attacks into legends, and the Apis are reasons why bulls in many ancient cultures are seen as symbols of fertility. So yes. And Asterion, the Minotaur of the Cretan labyrinth, is considered to be the last of the Apis. So the Minotaur from the labyrinth that's an Apis, and it's Asterion. Minotaur is the totem of the skin dancers, and that's just a little thing there. And yes, it was in the Art of the Changing Breeds, a visual guide to Fera, that we got the original infamous Werebuffalo that, we got the art for. Even though it's incorrect. But there might be some images in the Art of the Changing Breed, a visual guide to Fera, that exists still. I do not have that book to share that art. So, it's a W20 book. So, if you seek that out, there might be some good pictures of the Lost Breeds and Apis. I'm unsure. I can't say for sure. But yeah, that's it for Apis. again, the extinct changing breeds, some of them, there are sparks of hope. The Comatose, that wear bats, I've talked about them. Hey, their totem, there's an attempt to fix that. And those that maybe remain in the Umbra could return to the world as it is, or something like that. With their totem basically purified. There's a possibility of that. Is it a difficult process? Insanely. Is the possibility something that could actually be done? Insane. But possible. Grondor, Werewolves. Skullpigs still exist. Could they be purified? And then the kinfolk return? Maybe? Again, a very difficult, insane possibility, but there's something there that's seen. Like with the Comatose, the bat being, partially purified was something that has happened in lore. In Grondor, the Skullpig still exists. The Apis really isn't anything. Of the hopeful stories, the stories you could tell of resurrection, Apis is the one that we can point out and say, there really isn't any hope. Sure, the cows we know about, the bovine we know about, bred from aurochs, still remain. And it's not to say there isn't possibility there's a little spark of kinfolk left in them. Something that hasn't been bred out by the domestication process. But it's just so tiny and so non-existent, it's might be even impossible to find. It's hard to say. It's one of those things that we look at the Apis and we look at their story, and it is unfortunately sad. Their loss was, again, a point for others to survive. And I think that's an important part about what's good to remember them. Maybe we will never see an Apis again. The chances are, again, so slim. But there are those that should remember, and certainly locally, and others do. Remember the great things they did. Their use that they had. The things that they did to help. To temper humanity. To temper the changing breeds. To maintain. And it really was the Garou's arrogance that drove a lot of this stuff. Remember, they were the ones that basically, now, we're not going to listen to you. We just want warriors. Right. We want warriors. And you know what? They got them. I think that'll be a good point to leave it today. We remember the Apis. We remember them. We hopefully all. If you enjoyed this video, remember to check out all my other stuff. I go live on Twitch, recording these on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays. Saturdays is backup day if I'm missing those. Fridays is the Moon Darkness Day. If you want to see any of the World of Darkness, they're usually early to mid-afternoon. Sometimes earlier if, like something like Friday. I do other tabletop-related stuff up on Twitch that goes up on YouTube. My live show that's currently going on, Crimson Queen, Wednesdays, 9 p.m. EST, goes up a couple days later. It's a Pathfinder First Edition game, really fun. Doing Crimson Throne Adventure Path. Saturdays, at 6, discussing tabletop. We talk about news of the week and deeper discussion topics in the tabletop world that are really interesting to discuss. I have social media, Discord, Twitter, link below, twitter.com, and that's about it. And remember, all the tabletop stuff goes up on YouTube, so if you're joining me there, you're fine. And there's also gaming stuff that over on Twitch that I have the VODs of. Maybe I'll upload them to a VOD channel or something someday, but for now, yeah. Anyway, everybody out there, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you had a good time, hung out with me, But until the next time we talk about World of Darkness or something else, I bid you a deep and farewell.